In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the Paranormal Hour. Welcome to Ghost to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost to Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost to Ghost.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is the midnight hour. It is time for Ghost to Ghost. Hopefully you're joining us on a good night tonight. Grab you a nice something to drink, a nice blanket, curl up, and let's listen. Tonight's guest introduction, we'll talk to Heather Lawson, our case manager and podcast director.
Hello.
Eric Kerr, our research assistant and assistant podcast producer.
Hey there.
And, of course, myself. So, tonight continues part B, or part 2, of Spirit, Who Are We? A deep dive into the Spirit group and understanding how Ghost to Ghost became a part of it and what all we do. So, we're going to start off with part 2, and I don't want to get too deep into this, is what is Paranormal University Master Class? For those that don't know, I mean, we come out of the other episode, and if you're continuing along, one thing we offer is a Paranormal University Master Class. This started in 2006, okay? There are 2 classes covered, and again, this is the episode in itself, so I don't want to get too deep in here. But the one class, which is the basic class, is Introduction to Parapsychology, PUMC 100, Introduction to the Course, PUMC 101, in Orientation to Investigating, PUMC 102, Paranormal Studies, PUMC 103, Parapsychology, PUMC 104, Investigations Methodology, and it ends with PUMC 105, Scientific Instruments, and the very end is a live investigation. Now, this class starts, I'm not going to lie to you, it starts about 6 in the evening, ends about 4 in the morning. People go, oh my God, 4 in the morning. Well, if you want to be a paranormal investigator or parapsychology investigator, you better goddamn get well used to those hours. Welcome to our world. If you're not willing to step 4 in the a.m., you're not an investigator, you don't belong in here. The second class is Introduction to Evidence and Data Analysis. PUMC 200, Data Sampling and Instruments. PUMC 201, Analyzing Audio Evidence. And I got to turn the page. PUMC 202, Analyzing Video Evidence. PUMC 203, Analyzing an SD Session. PUMC 204, Analyzing Photo Evidence. And that's the second half. Now, the first class we talked about is taught at a known active site. We can't guarantee ghosts on the ghost site, but we try our best. These sites are usually well known. Now, a couple things you need to know. First of all, if you sign up for this class, you will not be given the site until 24 to 48 hours before we actually show up there. Why? Because we have people try to sabotage that and cause a problem. Also adds to the mystery of the whole event. So 48 hours before you're supposed to be there. Now, it'll be somewhere within 50-mile radius of the city of Indianapolis. That should be pretty easy. If you're in Muncie, the worst can happen is they'll be in Bloomington. Okay, so, you need to adjust. Duration of the class, we talked about this. She starts at 6 in the evening, ends at 4 the next morning. Location, we've talked about. Fees all change depending on the class location. If we're in a known haunted area that charges X amount for their admission, we're going to mark that up a little bit. We're not going to lie to you. That's how we buy equipment. We'll make a little money off your enrollment. Should we have... Okay, I'm sorry. What should we do for the training? That's all listed in the training. And again, we'll do an episode on Paranormal University. I know several people out there have some gift certificates they want to cash in. That is forthcoming. We usually do Paranormal Use in January, February, or March. And what does that tell you? That tells you our weather can be bad
or cold.
Or
wet.
we sometimes have to change it depending on the weather. So be aware of that fact, okay? Who teaches it? We all teach it. I'm a primary, but everybody has a part to teach. So something you should be aware of. Questions? Email us. We'll be more than happy to answer. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about marketing and social media. And unfortunately, Mia is not with us tonight. She's our social media and PR manager, but we're going to talk a little bit about Facebook and Instagram, and all three of us will help cover her. We have a wonderful Facebook audience.
Presence.
Presence, that's the word I was looking for. I was stumbling for drunkenly. It was presence. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, presence, we really do. And folks, be proactive. If you want to ask us something, just email us.
And interactive. Interactive
is very important because if Mia gets it, she'll either forward it to somebody can answer it or she'll answer it. We really appreciate, we get off on questions. So if you have a question, please email it to us on Facebook. Instagram is a copy. Whatever goes on Facebook goes on Instagram. If you're following us on Instagram, don't be bashful. If you want to ask a question, ask it. We'll get back to you. Anybody want to put on any more on that?
I would just say Mia is super friendly. She likes the interaction, and we all want to have outreach and conversations and stuff. We're so accessible.
All you gotta do is reach out there. We're there for you. And certainly, I think Mia does about one post a week. So we put something out there. Yeah, at least, if not more. We get memes. We get different things. Really, be serious. Get with us. Our podcast, Ghost to Ghost. We have over 7,000 downloads. We're pushing for 10,000. 19 different countries we have. So if you're listening, you're one of those 19. We talk a lot about how this began. Okay, this began 3 years ago. So we're at 2024, so that makes 2021 as our beginning year. How do we get the name? Well, the name really was a tribute to Art Bell and Sammy Terry. Basically, our podcast, we wanted to tribute to Art Bell. Art Bell is a legend. He ran Coast to Coast, and on the holidays, on Halloween, only on Halloween, he ran a Ghost to Ghost instead of Coast to. We adopted that. Our intro was dedicated to Sammy Terry. Sammy Terry, in the 70s and 60s, I grew up with him. He was on Channel 4 in Indiana, and he had a wonderful introduction. I can tell you some fun things about Sammy Terry. He always came out, he portrayed to be a ghoul. And if you've never, we ought to probably do a podcast on him, one of these days, because he's really a great guy. He passed away. Him and his wife were in a nursing home, but one of the things I remember is growing up, he had family, Terry family music, and we go in and go, "You're him, aren't you?" And he goes, No, I just run music stores. We start to walk out, he'd do this classic, let's laugh, and you knew it was him. And great guy, really was. So we wanted to honor their memory, and so a lot of how our episodes begin has to do a lot with that. So the name actually really came from a retired member who was our tech manager, Jim Hampton. He called me one day, we're going through this, he says, "You need to name it Ghost to Ghost." Now, I don't know where he got it at. I don't know if he saw it from the Art Bell Halloween sessions or what, but that's where it came from. So we talked about what we were going to talk about on the broadcast. We said, hey, same way we used to do a group, parapsychology, proof of life after death. So we started a YouTube channel. It didn't work out well. We had some great YouTubes. If you don't want nothing else for fun and giggles, you need to watch them. My stepson, when he was very young, was in them. He looks like the most unhappy, constipated elf you'll ever see in your life. It's great. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and as everyone knows,
those
go ahead.
videos with him, oh my gosh.
Yeah, with the hats. And one thing that happened was, YouTube was bought by Google. Google discontinued their podcast, and they're putting them on YouTube. hopefully by Christmas we will have that conversion. All of our podcasts will be on YouTube. You won't get any live video. You'll get the emblem, but you'll get all the audio. So anyway,
at some point we will be live or taped.
And people have asked us, hey, are you going on X? Or are you going on TikTok? That's all down the road. I mean, at this point,
we don't know.
Snapchat. We're pretty happy with Instagram, Facebook, and a podcast, and that's where we stay for right now. The other thing we have is lecture workshops, and people always ask me about these. Where are we going with lecture workshops? Well, these are made, one, because I lecture, and being a published author, I'm working on my second book. But these are actually lead-ins, and these help make us money. And we collect honorariums from my speaking engagements, and they are as follows. The first one is Let's Talk Ghosts. Okay, all these programs are about 45 minutes, and we start talking about parapsychology in general and us and how we work out. We also have the Ghosts of Christmas and Other Denizens, and that's the one we're getting ready to start. We're recording this during Thanksgiving. December, I have numerous engagements, and we talk about the origin of Christmas, Christmas ghosts. We talk about Krampus, and most of the time we have a live Krampus with us. It goes through, and he looks for the naughty.
As opposed to a dead Krampus.
As opposed to a dead Krampus, yeah. Yeah, we have a live Krampus that goes through looking for the naughty, so that St. Claus, all he has left is the good. We also have a series called The Hoosier Ghost Stories and Haunted Places. We have several volumes. Volume 1 deals with the Avon Bridge, and we kind of get into that, and that's a very good one. And it deals with Hannah House. Volume 2, we deal with the University Heights Hospital and Gatling Gun Club. Volume 3, we deal with, I'm sorry, I have to turn the page, so bear with me here. My script is slightly off. 3, I don't know, I can't see that well. Help me out. Black Boom Manor in the State Fairgrounds Coliseum. Volume 4 deals with, you thought I'd read through this. Gaslight Bar and the Volrath. And then there's more of these volumes to come. That's what's out there right now. The last one is Irish Ghosts and Legends. Okay. And I actually appear in kilt. A lot of people love this right before St. Patrick's Day. And I appear and we talk about the Irish Ghosts and Legends. We also have a couple more that aren't on this list. And they are for Paracons. We're white sheeting things like EMF readings and so forth. So those are all put into those. So questions, anything anybody wants to add to this list?
No?
No, I think,
okay.
I think they
if you've never been to a library, I mean, my God, I'll tell you what, there's some favorite libraries we all have. Brownsburg is one of them.
It's a very nice library.
It is, and they treat us very well. We have large crowds. Alexandria Monroe, very good one. Spencer.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, every one of these we go on, we find a good restaurant because we get there early. So for Spencer,
we gotta eat.
You'll get to eat.
Absolutely.
Spencer, it's the Hilltop, and oh my God, they have good food. Am I wrong? My wife is looking at me for okay. They have very good the gravy you could drink in a glass. So if you're in Spencer, I neither confirm nor deny. If you're in Spencer, try the Hilltop. It's right there before you get in Spencer. For Brownsburg,
the locale.
It's actually an upper end restaurants in a little mall, a strip mall. Very good. Actually, the food is very good. Now, if you are in Alexandria Monroe,
the Curve.
It's a little bar. It's a mama. And by the way, ladies, if you go in, you need to lift the thing and see what's under there. So, because she's a looker. Anyway, if you're in the Curve, it's a great restaurant. I have a great ham and cheese. My favorite sandwich is a grilled ham and cheese. I love that to death. I love cottage cheese, and they have both. It's fantastic. So anyway, I'll tell you, great locations.
They
please.
can even make a rusty nail for you.
They can make a rusty nail with Scotch and Drambuie. If you would, go to our website, www.spiritindiana.com. look at our calendar, and see where I'm appearing. Come out. It's free. You get to enjoy the lecture, and I think you'll be happy. Now, the one thing I will say is don't bring kids, especially to the Christmas and other denizens, because
Krampus might not be there.
yeah, but on top of that, as Krampus is there, you may, if your kids believe in Santa Claus, they may not after that. So, yeah, it creates doubt. It's probably a bad idea. So, if you're drinking and you're not sure where you should attend or not, come on down. We'll help you out there. Yeah, bring liquor. It's scotch. Not that cheap shit. None of that Johnny Walker, because friends don't let friends drink Johnny Walker. I'm just saying. Anyway, so come on out to the lecture workshops. I think you'll enjoy them. Okay, now, so we're going to talk a little bit about equipment our team uses. I mean, we have most of the equipment that most of the popular teams use. The big thing about it is, and if Tim was here, my tech manager, he'd tell you the same thing, the most important equipment is the investigator. If you're not fit and ready to go for the investigation, it doesn't matter what we put in your hand. It really won't make a difference. We use a lot of things, okay? Camera-wise, static cams, we use a Sony 6mm cam. These are fantastic. We have actually 12 of them. They're cabled. In other words, they are not infrared. They're not IP. They have a cable, so we have to run cabling. And you get in a big place like a museum or something, you're running hundreds of foot of cable. It's a mess. But they are the way everybody started. Taps, everybody ran them. So,
yes. And we're slowly working our way.
We're getting there, and we'll talk about that toward the end. We have multi-spectrum 4.5mm lenses, which multi-spectrum, one of the things that Dustin Perry and a few other people have been experimenting in is the wave of multi-spectrum. More entities can be spotted during that period of time. We have drive cams, so if we have to take a long drive, we can share some of that camaraderie in the vehicle or what we see. Personal cams, we have some we're experimenting with. It goes on the individual. Handy cams, we have some Sony V8 handy cams we use from time to time. GoPros, still cameras, trail cams rarely used, but we do have them, and thermal cameras. We have FLIR thermal cameras. We have SLS cameras, so we can use those. The biggest thing, which is new to us, we've yet to use it on investigation at this time, but will soon, is the new Wi-Fi cameras. We have 6 of those that work off Wi-Fi, which requires no cabling, a quick setup with no tape down. It's something for the future. We also use IR illuminators. If we have to shoot long distances beyond the point of the camera's view, we'll use illuminators so we can get further distance and depth. We have EMF meters, room monitors that tell us the temperature and change in EMF, thermostats, which are non-contact, or thermometers really, K2 meters, geophones for vibration, detect, stair steps and so forth, something walking, ion pumps. Occasionally we use these to spur activity. It goes back to the old story, which one came first, the chicken or the egg? Does the ion pumps generate activity that creates paranormal activity, or does paranormal activity wait on the ion to generate a field they can come in on? So either way, whatever your thinking is, sometimes we use those. Static electricity generators, we find that static electricity sometimes can bring in enough energy to account for a apparition. Tape measure and levels, old school. In case we get something like stairs, we have to measure the level to see if there's funhouse effect involved. We have trigger objects for Singapore experiments, anything from Ted the Bear, it's wired, to REM pods, ghost bell, laser grid, G2 laser grid, sonar, EMF tripwire, balls, and tape. Now, everybody asks me, do we tape the ball? No. That's your mind's in the freaking gutter. We don't tape anybody's balls to anything.
That's never happened to me.
That's
never happened. And by advice of counsel, that has never happened. We don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Anyway, we find that when we're looking at a trigger object in a camera, like a ball, to determine if it moves, we tape with masking tape, not on the ball. I want to point this out. Not on the ball. We tape a grid, a square grid, and we put the ball in the grid. And we can tell if the ball moves outside the grid, and we know there's
I thought
activity
these were
on
the
it.
cat balls, sorry.
Yeah, no, we're not to the cat balls
No.
yet. Yeah. So baby powder and chalkboard. Everybody says, what the hell you do with that? Well, we put the baby powder on a small checkboard and see if anybody writes on it. Any kind of entity interacts with that. So we can also use baby powder to see if doors are open or closed. Do we do it a lot? No, because we have to clean that shit up. We always leave any place we've been the same place, same way we received it. So that means we have to clean all that up. So we don't really like to use that unless we have to. Toys non-metered. We use some focus objects. We use certain toys that we might appeal to whatever ghost we think we're dealing with or entities. Mini mag lights, and you've all seen this on taps and kindred spirits. We turn the mag light to it just goes off, and then we try to get things to relight it. We've actually got some instruments like the ghost bell and the periscope and things that we don't need this for any longer. That the entities we can ask to light. Another thing is a candle. We take a white candle. Why do we use white? Because that's the cheapest candle we can buy. No, I'm sorry, but yeah, no. There's a lot of things we could tell you why the white, but yeah, truthfully, it's probably the cheapest. And we watch to see how it interacts, see if they blow it out, so forth. We're careful of that. We want the fire marshal's office to know that. Anyway, deck of cards. Sometimes we'll flip cards and we'll guess what the next card is. We'll ask the entity to tell us what the next card is, and we flip it. Music boxes. Son of Sid made a wonderful EMF detected music box. It's a proximity. Anybody gets near it, it sets the music box off. Certainly a plasma ball, we can have that, and it shows if anybody's touching it. That's those wonderful little electrical balls that, go between one and another. So it certainly, that's something we can use. Infrasound. This is something that most teams don't do. There's a big thing about infrasound right now, that infrasound is causing a lot of false negatives, or false positives rather, in parapsychology because it can cause a lot of issues. So we have a mic that was donated, and actually it was donated by me and Eric recently, and I donated software, and we're setting this up where we can detect infrasound. So infrasound's a big mover within the industry. Luminol kits, we do have that. We have generators. We have SD sessions equipment, which amounts to a sound-canceling headphone set and an S2 Spirit box. That's the only time we use Spirit box is in a double-blind study where we do an SD session. This was developed by students at MIT to contact entities on the other side. We have radios at a base station. We have some wonderful radios that we use that have a 5-mile point-to-point radius. We have a command central box which has a setup that detects motion sensors that are remotely placed. It looks at our stationary cameras, and it has weather alert. It has a lot of things into it. It's our portable system. So that kind of outlines the equipment we have. Heather, anything you want to throw in there?
No, I think that's a pretty good breakdown of all our equipment.
Okay, Eric?
No, I agree. That covers it.
Okay, so equipment-wise, that's where we stand. If you have any questions, send us an email on Facebook. We'll answer it. It's very important how we handle the data we collect. We collect a lot of data during investigations, okay? All data, before we leave the scene of the investigation, is transferred to a hard drive. Why? Well, I can tell you, in the past, we've had bad experiences. We had a tech manager many, many years ago who picked up a wonderful, wonderful shadow figure portrait that was sitting in a chair for about 16 frames. That was great. And then we went back to the hotel, and he left the damn notebook in the hotel closet. We never got it back. We lost all that evidence. So as a precautionary for handling the evidence in a clinical criminology sort of way, we put everything on the hard drive before we roll out so that nothing is left to guess what happens to. Okay, so we're very, very critical on how we handle that. The case manager keeps the drive, and it's in her possession, which is Heather, until such time that we get back to the crypt where it's then put online. All data is uploaded online in raw form. All docs are scanned in, so our our docs controlling Command Central are all put in, the contracts, everything's put in there. It all goes up on our shared drive, and we have a shared drive that all members of Spirit have access to. When I tell them when you want to analyze this information, you need to copy the raw material to your hard drive. And why do we want to do that, Eric?
So that you don't accidentally delete or overwrite.
Or,
Exactly.
Yeah, correct the original raw.
Correct.
And needless to say, in the words of Jess Fox, where the most warning labels are placed because...
Somebody did that before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've had that happen. So when you copy the raw data, the raw data stays on the hard drive. You put your copy over, and whatever you do to it, you load it back, but it doesn't go in the raw directory.
We are taking a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, we had to take a quick pause. Unfortunately, and we're asked for the prayers of everybody. Eric, our research assistant, just had a medical emergency, and we had to transport him out by ambulance. He's on his way to the hospital right now. We're going to finish the podcast, I and Heather, but we're asking for everybody's prayers. He was quite stable when he left, and we're hoping everything comes out okay.
Yes.
All right. When we left off, we talked about handling data. We told you why we before we ever leave the scene of the investigation, we transfer it onto a portable hard drive, which stays with the case manager, Heather, until we get back to the crypt. Once we're back to the crypt, it gets uploaded to the Spirit drive. All the docs from our control, from our Command Central documentation, and we're not going into great dive there, but our lead investigators' site information, all that gets fed in and scanned in. It's all part of the drive to look at. Okay. The raw data never gets touched. We always have everybody take and copy that off the drive onto their hard drives or their formats. We never touch the raw data. So when we archive a case, we have the raw data and we have what we found as far as what we call hits that were, instances of either EVPs, EMF hits, things that we can document. Once we're completely done, whatever we find, we put on a thumb drive, and after we call or go to have a reveal at the client, we hand them the thumb drive so they have what is left. So that's basically the process. Documentation, Command Central, we log in who's on the investigation. We log in what equipment is used by equipment number, so we know if there's a failure, we know which piece failed. We calibrate all the equipment to ensure it's right. We do a time sync to ensure that we're all on the same time, and we time that with the DVR. Excuse me. We also have client contracts. We have the client sign a contract agreeing to let us in and releasing us from any liability. And then we have equipment lists. We check the list before we arrive. After we get ready, we're ready to leave. We check it again and ensure we're leaving with all the equipment we came in from. So, very important. These are all things we've learned over the last 20-some years. I think the last thing we'll talk about for this episode is most memorable cases. Okay? And I want to say this. All names and locations have been changed. Ladies and gentlemen, the story you're about to read is true. Only the names have been changed to protect the innocent. That's from Dragnet. And I'm sure it dated myself, but by God, I've always wanted to do that. So,
You got a shoe phone?
Pardon?
You got a shoe phone?
Do I have a what?
A shoe phone.
What's a shoe phone?
Wasn't that from...
No, that's not from Dragnet. Dragnet was the FBI. You're talking about Get Smart. Okay, Get Smart has shoe phone. Okay, no.
Oh.
Dragnet
See,
had Harry Potter, and I can't think of for the life of me, I can't think of the guy's name. But yeah, they always said nothing but the story. Just need the facts, lady, just the facts. That was what they were famous for. And so anyway, we're going to talk about first one had to do with a case that dealt with a elderly lady, very sweet lady, and I remind me a lot of my grandmother. And she contacted us. She told us she was living in a retirement community and said, hey, look, I can't sleep in my bedroom. Every time I do, something tries to smother me. And,
Yes.
It's horrible. I don't know what to do. And so we talked about, hey, past people, so forth. So I after the initial interview, I gave this to research. And Jennifer and Eric came up with the fact that the entire community was surrounded by this giant cemetery, the largest cemetery in the town. Matter of fact, the only cemetery in the town. So certainly things could have been related to that. And anyway, long story short, I explained to her, I said, well, look, we can't really investigate.
Didn't it end up the cemetery was built after the...
Yeah, it turned out the cemetery is built, well, no, the cemetery is built before.
Oh.
But we found out that the location was built after the fact. It was built in the 80s. The lady was the second owner in her particular unit. The guy had been there before. There was some issues with, but he was a paraplegic and apparently either moved. I don't think there's any indication he passed away or passed on. He just moved. So anyway, as we were talking with this woman, I thought she was very sweet, and we couldn't.
She was very nice.
She was. We couldn't really isolate anything. This is a very small apartment. It's basically a very small living room with a add-in kitchen. One room basically. She she had a bedroom, and that was it. I mean, there wasn't much to this place. And a bathroom. Yeah, that was about it. So we told her. We said, "Well, look, it's our policy in rentals, and I don't know. I think we've already covered that. Did we already cover? Okay. So we told her, we said, you have to get the property manager or the owner to agree. I really thought that'd be the end of it. I hung up. An hour later, property manager calls me and says, look, I'll sign anything you need.
It was very quick.
Yeah. He says, I need you down here to make these people happy. They're all, all up in arms. I said, all of them? Well, no, but a few of them. And so we went down. Enough, yeah. We faxed him emailed him a contract. He emailed it back, signed, and, no problems. We went down. One thing we found out when we got there was this. She had not told us the entire truth. She had an ex-husband who was already dead. We knew about that. Turns out this guy was kind of a drunkard. And so, as I understand it, he had a tendency to come home and want to beat on her and the kids. So she tried to smother him to death one time on a pillow that he had urinated on. And apparently didn't succeed, but it came close. So certainly there was certainly a connection there. We thought she should have led with that. But anyway, she thought the house was being, haunted by him, and she wanted it cleaned. Now, I'll tell you, we don't do cleansings. We don't. We'll get you in touch with people who do, but we don't do them. It's just a policy that we don't do because it gets into problems. But in this one instance, I agreed to do a cleansing. I hadn't done one in years and years, but I felt like if she could sleep in her bedroom, it was worth it. So my tech manager, Tim Webb, was good enough to step up and say, I'll help you, I'll assist you. And we did the cleansing. After it was over with, I remember Tim looking at me and he said, do you think that it worked? Do you think it cleansed everybody or everything that was there? And I said, well, Tim, I'll tell you. I said, I don't know if it did or not, but the one thing I can tell you is if she sleeps in the room, it worked.
It worked.
I don't know if there's anything there. I don't know if there was, because we didn't really find much. We did find one thing. We found what we thought was a young girl that was there, and then she volunteered the fact that her
cousin drowned.
Yeah, her cousin drowned, and the girl was all 15. Wet. Yeah. So, I mean, we can get a lot of information, but I told her, I said, hey, look, if it works, it works. About a week later, she called me. She'd been sleeping in the bedroom every night, was perfectly happy. So, whether there was something we removed or not, it didn't really matter. It worked out. She was happy, we continued down the line. So, the next one we have was actually from the southern part of the state as well, around Martinsville. And a young couple called us and said, hey, look, we got this house that we live in, and we believe it to be haunted. And, hang on. So anyway, it was a nice home. It was on the edge of Martinsville. And I said, well, why do you think it's haunted? And she says, well, it was passed down to us. And they gave us a lot of background about a house that was tore down that was around the bend, still on their property, and how this demon had haunted them, and they'd actually burnt the house to the ground. That's not the house they lived in, but we got this big, long story. So we did the investigation. Sure enough, all of it checked out. Not the demon part, but we checked out there was a house there. It had burnt. It had burnt back in the early 1940s. We kind of researched everything. So we went in and did investigation. It turned out in the basement, this home had been built in the 1700s. In the basement, there was still eye hooks and things for chain shackles in the basement. We found out that's where they kept the slaves. This house had been around prior to slavery, and it had a lot of things into it. That was one of the first big ones. It was a young couple. We helped them with the situation. Hopefully they could live in it. They were scared to live in it. The young man was at work every day, and she was home alone by herself and scared to death. We had some common bonding. His grandfather was a fireman, and we talked in length about that. We tried to help best we can. Another one would be the Fowler case. Now, that's one Heather would have been on. The first two, Heather wouldn't. Heather was on the first one.
I wasn't with that house.
Yeah, you weren't in the Martinsville. But the Fowler was neat. Fowler, Indiana.
I like the theater.
Yeah, the theater was fantastic. It's called the Fowler Theater. And I'll tell you what, it's fantastic. And you can go through there for a price, and you can investigate. It's a load of fun. If you don't want to do that, just go to a movie there.
Go watch
they
a movie.
appreciate it. All the people work there are volunteers. It's all used. It's one of the last Art Deco theaters in existence. It's worth the drive. It's just fantastic. And I tell you what, we have an episode on that. I'm going to ask you to check out that episode. It's well worth it. I tell you what, that was one of our favorite cases. Anything you want to add on Fowler?
It was just, you wouldn't expect to find what we found at there. Really.
Yeah. Truthfully, there was a lot there. The Puff the Magic Dragon case, this is one that I think predates Heather.
I think so.
Yeah.
I've heard about it, but
yeah,
I don't think
it was over on the south side of Indiana, and we had a guy call us, and he told us that his kids were witnessing this creature that would manifest. It looked like a mini dragon, kind of looked like Puff the Dragon, and he told us many things the children had. Hang on just a minute here. Had to pass Zara off. Zara need to go sit with Mom for a little bit. Anyway, the long and the short is, he relayed all this. He was on a house. The house he inherited from his aunt. His aunt was basically a paraplegic, and he had taken care of her to the day she died. Her room was still intact, still had the crane they lifted her out of the bed with and the chair. And we went in there and spent most of the day. He took off and left, just left us with the house. We had interviewed him prior to that and the children. We had him gave him some crayons and a drawing pad and asked him to draw what they seen. In the end, we believed, because the kids really didn't draw much, and we finally figured out, we really thought what he was seeing was probably induced. And we asked him, do you participate in recreational drugs? And the first thing he said was, yeah, I smoke a little marijuana. And we actually didn't want to say, well, we ran across this stash by accident. We don't search people's homes. We're investigating. We knocked a tin off.
Yeah, but if you leave it out.
Yeah, it was out in the open. And he left a tin out, and it was open, and it had a load of marijuana in it. And apparently he'd been smoking a lot. And so when we got right down to it, we found no evidence. We looked this thing inside now. I called him that night and said, you need to come back here and take control of your house. We're ready to leave. We're done. He wouldn't come back. He said, just lock the door and shut it. It'll be fine. I got the key. And he had already signed before he left a release of control of the house, so we weren't responsible. But essentially, we believed a lot of that may have been under the influence of narcotics. So, one of them that predates Heather probably, I don't have anybody here with around the time, was the ghost vampire case.
No, I remember that guy.
Okay, you were on then. Okay. So he called me, much like us. He was a veteran. His meds turned out were imbalanced, but he was telling me about these ghost vampires and how they were haunting the house and how upset he was. And I talked to his caretaker on the phone. She told me she didn't know what was going on, but there was some strange stuff. We gave him some recommendations. Those weren't working. And when I found out what was happening, I asked him to go to the VA and tell them what was happening. And they come to find out his drugs were imbalanced. And he called me the next day and said, they changed my drugs. I think the vampires are going away. And I said, that's great. We never heard from him again. So, case solved. At least he was in good shape.
He got the help that he needed.
He did. And we helped him get
whether
there.
Whether it was us or somewhere else.
Exactly.
He got the help he needed.
Or all of us together. One way or another, he got what he needed. The gun club. The Gatlin Gun Club, located on Illinois Street downtown. One of the earliest investigations we ever did. The Gatlin Gun Club, and I tell you what, there's a separate episode on this. If you get a chance to listen to it, it's real informative. Being a member of the Masonic Order and the Shrine, the Gun Club was part of the Shrine at one point. I joined the Gun Club when I joined the Shrine way back when, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was a lot different than it is now. It's gone now. But anyway, originally there was all kinds of records of what it had been, and it was led to believe that it was one time it was John Gatlin's residence. It was also led to believe it was a undertaker's residence, and it was even a funeral home. You need to watch that. One of the big things that came out of that one was we learned one thing on setup. We went in and started setting up. We decided we were on Command Central, and all of a sudden, there was this woman that screamed. Now, bear in mind, this is like 10 o'clock. It's cold. It's on a January night. And I'm thinking, there's gals that might be a reputable, very questionable reputation walking up and down the road, and it could have been one of them. But it's still, I know they're out late trying to make money, but still, I sent several people out. They searched the entire property. And, of course, it had a fenced-in rear beer garden. They went all the way on the outside. Nothing. And then we all met back at Command Central. I had people in the basement, on the second floor. They were all over this place. It was a good size. And everybody heard it at the same volume, no matter where it was at. That's when we realized we need to run a recorder while we're setting up at Command Central to catch some of this. So the screaming woman was certainly a lesson learned, and we kept that ever since. So, Ed Chases a Ghost. This is a funny one.
That's a good title.
Oh my God, yeah. Ed was our co-founder, and I bear in mind we're not with Tennessee Wave Chasers. No offense to Chris or any of the guys, but anyway, we didn't have a trap. We didn't trap ghosts. So anyway, all of a sudden we're out there and we're at this particular investigation. I can't give up the site. But it had an area that went around in a hallway in a circle. And I had sent Ed in one direction with one of the crew, and I took the other crew, which was normal. And all of a sudden, I hear the worst commotion. We come out to the main area, and Eddie's running. And he looks at me and says, grab it quick. And I'm going, grab what? As he passes me in this ferocious, and he's going, you missed it. It ran right by you. And I'm thinking, what? What ran by me?
What was it?
After we got him slowed down, his heart rate down, we come to find out he was chasing what he thought was a spirit. I didn't see it, couldn't catch it if I wanted to, but it ran by. Later that night, we had a young lady with us who was fairly new to the group. Everybody had been cautioned about this particular location and not using provoking. She provoked one time. It was just enough that caused a scratch from her lower earlobe on the right side all the way down her neck to her clavicle. And we have pictures of that still to this day. She didn't stay with the group. Yeah, you've seen them. Didn't stay with the group. She chose to bail out because of everything that happened. If I had my choices to go to the next one, be the Cumberland apartment. All these were learning lessons, okay? We got called many years ago to the Cumberland apartment.
This is why we have contracts.
That's right. This all began because of that. It was a rental. It was probably, it looked like an old motel, to be honest with you. It had been converted into apartments. It had two wings, and they had upstairs and downstairs, and all the rooms open to a balcony. This young couple, the man was a Marine coming out of service, and she was a single young lady. They were probably in their early 20s. They called us and said, hey, look, we're getting this haunting, and it's horrible. So they let us know there was a lot of kinesis involved, things moving, and so forth. So we came in and agreed to do our investigation. It was awkward. We had to back one of our vehicles up and run cables in through the back sliding glass that went to a balcony. The back of each apartment had either a ground floor had patios, and the upper floor had a balcony. Luckily, the apartment below them wasn't rented, so there was no one there, so we ran cabling up and had a command central inside of a SUV. during this operation, we were taking and sampling data. We had them, they went to go stay at another occupant's apartment complex within the complex. And so when we were done, last thing we said is, hey, we're leaving and we'll look over the data. Within 14 days, we'll give you an answer. Now, the one thing funny about this is I do believe there was something there. Now, I don't know if they knew it. I don't know if they detected it or if they had. It was a matter of convenience. We'll get to that in a minute. But something jumped out. It was a shadow figure. It jumped out within 6 inches of my face.
This is where that came from.
Yeah. I have never had an entity ever do that. So I was, usually they screw with Eddie. They don't screw with me. And this one jumped right out within face limit. And before I thought about it, you had, oh, Jesus Christ, really loud, and jumped back. My tech manager at the time was a guy named Jim Hampton, who's retired now. And for like a year and a half, his ringer was me yelling, oh, Jesus Christ, oh, Jesus Christ. He kept running as a ringer. He thought that was funnier than hell. But anyway, at the end of it, when we left, normally we get in from investigation. If we stop to eat, it's around 6-ish. So I'm going to bed at 6 a.m. It's like old times when I drank all night. At 6 a.m., I expect to get some sleep. At 10 o'clock, my phone rings. I don't get up to noon. I answer it. It's an irate lady who is the property manager at that facility. And she's going on and on and on about the fact we investigated there. And I said, look, lady, we had the occupants sign a contract. They are the leasee. She goes, but you're not allowed to sublease. I said, we didn't sublease. We just asked for a contract for permission to come in and do the investigation. They signed it. It's all legal. We had a lawyer. He knew, he looked at it and said, yes, it's legal. And I said, so we did what we could. She said, well, they came down here this morning and told me that you said the whole complex was haunted and they wanted out of their lease. I said, whoa. That's not what we said. I said, we didn't tell them anything. We just did the investigation. We told them it'd take 14 days to analyze the evidence, and we get back with them in 14 days. I said, that's all we said. She said, well, that's not what they said. They want out of their contract. So initially, we saw that we were being used. We were being used big time. So, as it were, at that point forward, our contracts changed and we had new rules. If you're a renter or part of an establishment, either the property manager or owner has to agree and sign a contract with us, and then you have to sign a contract. So both the owner or property manager and the leasee both have to sign contracts as it's okay for us to be in there. So that was a monumental time. The barn ghost.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
Because that was pretty much the only thing we heard that night.
Yeah. We were up north, and a gentleman called us and said, hey, look, my barn is haunted. And the way the barn worked was it wasn't sealed. It was during late summer.
Yeah, it was just starting to cool off.
Yeah, starting to cool off. Wasn't real cool yet. And probably September, October. And he's in this huge barn outside away from his house. And he said, and he had 2 show cars. He had I can't remember what he had, a Camaro and something, maybe a Mustang.
Maybe an old Mustang.
And he had those, and he had an antique John Deere tractor. It was beautiful. He had some bike parts. He had a bunch of stuff in there, but basically it was auto mechanic shop. It was this huge barn. It had the original barn, then the built-on shop, and he was restoring like a 1940s pickup truck in it. And so he told us what was going on and what was happening, and we showed up. And a couple of things, we spent a good part of 4 hours investigating it. We got very little evidence other than we had a couple of cat balls that went off, and these were talking about earlier. They're sensitive, and they're basically cat toys. If you touch them, any kind of vibration, they're basically a geophone, causes them to light up. We placed those in certain places, but we got an EVP, and it was very, very vague. But probably the biggest thing we had on the EVP was it sounded like somebody threw a bolt and hit a 55-gallon drum.
Yes.
The problem was, it was in response to something we asked. The problem was there was no 55-gallon drums. There wasn't anything metal in there at all. The smallest container he had was a 5-gallon bucket, or the biggest container. So, honestly, it was interesting. It had one whole side of the loft open. We didn't find out until later it was open to the outside. We got a lot of contamination. We learned in that particular instance there was a load of contamination we dealt with. So And then I can't tell you the exact locations, but we investigated an Oddfellows Hall somewhere in the state of Indiana. And
that was really neat.
It was neat. It was great. We got some great EVPs. This place had a history, anything from being a brothel to being a card hangout for old gangsters of the 20s and 30s all the way through. The problem was it was in the middle of summer. It was 3 or 4 floors with no elevator.
And no AC.
That's when we learned those kind of things we'd like to do in the winter. And, oh my God, we were tired. We were worn out. Took twice as long. We had to run a lot of cabling. It just was a mess. But it was a great investigation. And the individual has another site there in that same town. He wants us to come back, and hopefully we're going to take a look at that. One that predates Heather, and there's 2 more here I have on my list. And one of those was in Beech Grove. And it was a facility, and I'll never forget this. This has been 16, 17 years ago. We went out on a winter night, kind of like now in the fall, early winter. And at the time, it was all pretty clear. We were going into this to investigate this location. We got in there about 2 o'clock, or 1:30, maybe between midnight and 2, we'll say. Unbeknownst to us, the weather changed instantaneously, and we got an ice storm in.
Wow.
It dropped about 1 inch of ice, and I swear to God.
Were you stuck?
Oh, yeah. Nobody knew it happened. All of a sudden, my tech manager, Jim Hampton, comes in and says, you ain't going to believe this shit. Everything out there is ice-coated. We're going to have to hammer our way into vehicles. And I said, oh, really? He goes, yeah. We'd had a lot of activity in this location. All the team took a break. We walked out there in every vehicle. We came in 3 vehicles. You couldn't even get the door handles loose. So we're out there. So we send, my tech manager stays in, my assistant tech manager, and 2 other people. Now, bear in mind, this is at 3 o'clock in Beech Grove. It's very limited. So we got 3 people out there trying to de-ice the vehicles enough to get into them. We wrap up everything. We get home, and the road is just a solid skating rink.
Yeah,
and we're trying to get out of there. And at the time, I lived up on the 22nd Street on the east side in a demilitarized zone. And so we were trying to get back to there.
Place.
Oh, God. We ended up getting there by like 4 in the morning. It was the worst storm in the world. By the time the next day came, and about 6 the next day evening, we melted it all off. But, I mean, it was a mess. The last one I have is the very first investigation in 2002 that we ever did. It was in Noblesville, and I can't tell you where. Again, our sites are protected. We don't give out information for clients, but it was up in Noblesville, and they called us in and said, hey, we know who's haunting this place. It's this guy. They showed us a painting. His last name was like Hogshead or Hogshead. And he said, this is who haunting this place. We know it. And I said, okay, how did you know that? Because our research people didn't come up with that. And I said, well, his painting fell off the wall when we were talking to him. I go, okay, that's...
You were talking to him?
Yeah, I said, you're carrying on a conversation, right? And I said, yeah. And I said, did you ask him to drop the painting? He said, no. And I said, well, it just doesn't make sense. Long story short, turns out, after we got talking to him, I said, look, there's no way that this could be... it's rare. And so anyway, we did the investigation. And it turns out that wasn't who was haunting the place. We actually found out there was other people involved through K2 sessions and question and answer, Basically, what they call them nowadays is a call and response. Yes. I mean, back then it was K2 sessions and EVP sessions. Still is in my book, but they call them, So anyway... It happened back then, the same night while this was going on. We had the worst thunderstorm. It was during the summer, probably about July, August. Worst thunderstorm ever the world come in. You could taste and feel a static electricity. And oh my God, the activity picked up 3-fold for about an hour and a half. When the static electricity went, so did the activity. So, and back then we had Swan cameras. I mean, it was really terrible. Goodness. We bought those at Menards. There was 4 cameras and a DVR. And, I mean, we were working bare essentials. But that's where we started.
Yeah, everybody's got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. So those are the cases. So I hope that this deep dive, and it's been a long road tonight. Let me tell you what. We got a victim at the hospital. We got a member at the hospital. And, I mean... It's been a long road, but I'm hoping that you can all look at this and have a better idea of how Spirit Paranormal operates. And certainly how Ghost to Ghost. So we do a lot. We enjoy what we do. And we hope you enjoy our broadcast. We really do. And I hope this hasn't been too boring. I hope it's been educational. And anything you want to add, dear?
No, glad to be part of the team.
Yep, and we're glad to have you. And I'll tell you what, for all those out there, Happy New Year, and be safe. And if you're going to get into this, think about this a little bit. There's a whole lot to it.
And we're always open to suggestions. If you have any ideas of what you'd like to hear from us on a future podcast,
go to Facebook and let us know. That's our medium. If you go to Facebook or Instagram and say, hey, Chief, Ghost to Ghost, Heather, whoever, I really would like to hear you cover something on this, send it out there. We'll recognize you. When we get closer to 10,000, we're going to run a contest. We're going to give away maybe an EVP meter or a K2 meter, and that'll be our gift. So, stay tuned. We'll let you know. Watch our Facebook. Go out there. Stay tuned on Facebook. That's how you're going to tell when we do this. So that's all I have for this evening. This episode was written by myself and Heather Lawson. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the ghost story of the day with Eric Kerr.
Today's ghost story comes from Haunted Indiana, Ghosts and Strange Phenomena of the Hoosier State by James A. Willis. And we're headed to Western Indiana today. This one is entitled Still on Patrol After All This Time. As a general rule, cemeteries in the United States close at dusk and do not open again until dawn. Sadly, with the resurgence of ghost hunting comes an increased number of people who feel the need to go into cemeteries at night, simply to vandalize. In order to counteract that, more and more police departments are having their officers patrol cemeteries. So if you don't want to risk a ticket or possible arrest, you should stay out of cemeteries at night. And in the case of Putnam County's Boone Hutchison Cemetery, you just might encounter a police officer who has been dead for more than 60 years. Created in 1812, Boone Hutchison Cemetery, or Boone Hutch, is a beautiful cemetery that sits atop a hillside off of South County Road 450 West. It's the kind of peaceful cemetery where you can take a leisurely stroll and collect your thoughts. Perhaps that's why, if the legend is to be believed, one police officer in particular has chosen to hang around and protect it. The ghostly officer is said to make his presence known by appearing as a bright blue light that originates at the back of the cemetery. Other times, the officer can be plainly seen and is either bathed in a blue glow or else is carrying a blue light with him. Either way, if he catches you in the cemetery after dark, he is not going to be happy. If you're not put off by the idea of encountering a police officer from the other side, then how about a pack of spectral dogs with glowing red eyes? That's right. There's supposed to be a group of demonic dogs roaming the cemetery at night, chasing out trespassers who enter the grounds. If you encounter them, you better hope you have your running shoes on because they're rumored to be very, very fast. One last legend surrounding Boone Hutch is that there is a cave entrance guarded by a ghost only referred to as a dark shape. If you manage to get past this creature and enter the cave, you'll find that it runs under the cemetery. But be forewarned. According to legend, some of the caskets from the cemetery's residents have broken through the roof of the cave, and human remains are said to be scattered about. So there's no telling what or who you might be crawling over if you enter the cave.
Thanks for listening to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air, or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd. All rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.